Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We're joined today by Coach Perry Skaggs, Athletic Director, PE teacher at Duarte High School down in the southern section, which is just outside of Los Angeles, a little bit east, not quite to the IE for the Californians in the room here. But Coach, thanks for taking the time to jump on.
Thanks for having me.
Love to get a little more info. So take us through your background. When did you start this whole deal, and how did you end up at Duarte High School and every stop in between, right? From the time you graduated high school, hell, you can even talk about your high school experience if you want, but everything that got you to, when are we? April 6th, 2026, heading into this weekend's Athletic Director Conference where you are an award recipient, and we can get into that as well.
Sounds good. I'm a product of the LA Unified School System, graduate of Fairfax High School, went to elementary school, middle school within the LA Unified System. I started coaching at my alma mater the year after I graduated, so there was a year in between. And basically, I coached football from then until I got to Duarte about 8 years ago. And then I just concentrated full time on being the athletic director. So I have a boatload of experience coaching in the private schools, in the small schools. I did 8-man football at a couple different times. I was the head coach at Flintridge Prep for a while. I was the defensive and offensive coordinator at the Viewpoint school, the head coach at Pilgrim schools, where I started as my head coaching career at football. And I worked with a fantastic gentleman by the name of Gene Hicks, who was my mentor during that time as far as football, and he was the athletic director as well. So I learned a lot from him just watching, because I knew somewhere down the line athletic administration was something I wanted to get into. So I picked his brains for a lot of stuff. And Pilgrim was a small private school in downtown LA, and it was great. We had a fantastic athletic program, fantastic coaches led by Gene Hicks. And then I made the transition to the public schools and went to work at Washington Irving Middle School in LA Unified, but I kept coaching all the way through that time. So I was at Viewpoint with Derek McIntyre. He was out there at the time. We had coached against each other when I was at the Pilgrim School, and that was a wonderful experience for 5 years. But he decided to move on and went someplace different. So to drive all the way out to Calabasas, that was enough. 5 years of that was good. And that's when I got a job at Flintridge Prep as an assistant coach during that season. And the head coach there, Brad Miller, left after his 3 years there. And the athletic director at the time, Alex Rivera, asked me if I was interested in taking the head coaching job and interviewing for it. So I did, and they selected me. And I was the coach there for 4 seasons. And then I had the opportunity to work at the Westmark School in athletic administration. So I left the public school system. At that time, you're in the public school system at about a decade, you're in there, you're a lifer. It makes no sense to move anywhere else. And so I was there about 10 years. And I decided to take that opportunity, roll the dice a little bit, and go back to the private schools. And I was at Westmark for 6 years. Really upgraded their athletic program, added a bunch of sports, streamlined some things, made some things much more easier and accessible to students, and just straightened some things out. They were doing some things that were not the best practices as far as just organizing the athletic department. It had nothing to do with anything else than that. And I was the head coach out there at Westmark. Now, Westmark was a school with kids with language-based learning challenges and differences. And so as an educator, it really started to inform me on the different learning styles that kids had, which transitioned all the way down into sports, across all the sports that we did, but especially football. Football's tough. There's a lot of information that you have to process, and you have to process it at the snap of the ball. So I was very proud of the things that we were able to accomplish. We won a league championship when I was there. We were in the playoffs 4 out of the 6 years that I was the head coach, and we had established ourselves within that 8-man community as a solid program. We weren't going to beat the huge schools at that time, but we were competitive, and we earned our respect, and that came from the hard work of the kids, but also recognizing different ways to coach them. You couldn't coach them the same way that I coached kids when I was coaching at Fairfax High School. That was a tremendous opportunity, and I really enjoyed all the time that I got to spend there. But I decided to go back to the public schools, mostly for long-term retirement type things, as you started to look long-term. And I had my fill of the private schools, and private schools are different. It's a different animal. It's a different beast altogether. So I went back to the public schools, worked a couple years at LA Unified at the Contreras Learning Center downtown, West Adams Prep, coached a little softball and some swimming along the way. As the athletic directors there, I found out, oh man, you can coach, you can do different things. Chris Hattie, who's the athletic director at Contreras, who's also being honored in the city section this year. So it's pretty exciting. He told me he needed a swim coach. I said, I've never coached swim. He goes, you coached a lot. You can figure it out. So I did swim for a season. Fantastic. Really enjoyed it. And I really get involved. We have the swim program at Duarte, so I have a strong frame of reference for that. So I was there for a couple of years, and I was looking for another athletic administration opportunity. And Duarte kind of fell in my lap. And I interviewed and got hired. And it's the best place I've worked at through my entire career. Just the people there, the community is fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I'm going to be there as long as they have me, or until I decide that it's time to retire and do some other things and enjoy life in a different way.
That's quite the story, as most people are in one of those boxes or another. And you didn't start in one, go to the other, and stay. You went back and forth multiple times, which is also fascinating because that usually doesn't happen in our world, right? So, like, you're either a private school guy or you're a public school guy, or you start in one and go to the other and you stay there. So, how do I want to ask this? Do you know of anybody else that's been on that path, right? Because I look at this and I'm like, you're an anomaly. And I would love to get your take on consolidating for people that are maybe flirting with a move as to, and I know every site is different, so I'm gonna ask you for some generalities. But what's the private versus the public in regards to why one would be attractive, not over the other, because everybody's got their own journey, but you going back and forth is fascinating to me, and I'd love to get just your take on what you would share with other people as they start this thing.
Yeah, I never really thought about being an anomaly because it was just my own journey. It's just where things went. But you're right. I can't really think of any of my other colleagues that have that sort of private school and public school experiences. You're right. It's usually one way or the other.
Or you start. So, like, I went to private school in high school, went to public university, taught public school for 9 years, to your point, in STIRS, almost a decade. Then I went all boys Catholic for 2, and then I've been at an independent school for 16 years, and I'm not going back anytime soon. So it's kind of like you find your niche and then you stay, and you're like, nah, I've had enough of this. Let me go back.
Some of them were circumstances, others were choices. Starting in the private schools, that was brand new to me. I was a public school product, right? Born and raised through. Started coaching there. The opportunity came to teach at Pilgrim, and it was like the first teaching opportunity I had. And I loved it there. I was working summers in their summer day camp program. My longtime friend who was the head of school at Sierra Canyon, Jim Scrumbus, was working there. And so Jim took me in for the summers because they hired him to run the summer program. And we had worked together sleepaway camps and stuff when we were younger. And so he said, oh man, I want you to come over here and I want you to work summers. So I started, really fell in love with the place. They obviously, thought I was competent and whatnot. So they had a teaching opportunity and they hired me. And honestly, I would have never left Pilgrim, probably not. I loved it. The relationships you could build with the students, it was small. So you knew everybody, right? You knew every kid, and it was a K through 12. So I would teach kindergarten PE, and in the afternoon, I was maybe out there coaching football. I love that aspect of it. But, private schools, sometimes their financial stability goes up and down. Pilgrim's was in a down phase. I had been there 7 years already, and I was the low man on the totem pole. And they decided they had to make some cuts in the department, and that's why I left. And then that drove me back to the public schools, because at that time I was like, I need some more job security. I don't want to be, you're at a private school, you're at-will employee. Every year, if they don't want to renew your contract, they don't have to. So I just decided to go that route. And it was great. I was teaching in the public schools, but I was still coaching in the private schools at Viewpoint and at Flintridge Prep. So I had the best of both worlds. So it was nice. But when this opportunity to get into athletic administration came at Westmark, I just decided to jump on that because that's something I wanted to do. And having familiarity with the private schools, it was not a problem. So the transition was easy. But after 6 years there, now the private schools are very parents are very hands-on. Like they're paying for their kids' education, so they feel, probably rightly, are entitled to a lot of access. So I would get there in the morning and my inbox, I'd have 10, 15 emails already from whatever was going on. Now, Westmark was unique because parents were really involved because their kids had learning differences and challenges. So they were intimately involved in lots of different things. And it was an expensive school. And so the socioeconomic background of the clientele was one that was pretty elite. There were lots of high-powered Hollywood people and athletics, kids of people who were in athletics and the music business. One of my favorite all-time parents was the late Jim Gandolfini. Jim had his son there, and we bonded on a relationship because I talked his son into starting with flag football, and Jim was a big football guy, and he was like totally excited. I got an email from him. I'd never met the man, and the email was like, we had been buddies forever. Thanks for convincing my kid to play football. We know the benefits of athletics. And he was really upset because he couldn't come back to watch any games because he was stuck in New York on his movie that was running long. And there were plenty of those. There were plenty of those relationships that I got to build with some fantastic people. But after 6 years, it can really grind on you because especially at Westmark, and not in a negative way, but for me, it started to be like a lot. It just started to be a lot. And so I decided to go back to the public schools. That and the same thing came up is this long-term for me, year-to-year contract? The pay was great. The people were great. I was at a point, I was in my, I don't know, 40s. You're looking for some stability within your career. And so that's when I made the decision to go back to the public schools, and that's where I've been ever since. And I really didn't think I was going to get back into athletic administration. I'd coach, I'd find a place to coach and still continue with that. But the Duarte opportunity came, and it was fantastic. I just thank my lucky stars every day.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I think for the uninitiated, it's not good or bad. It's just different in that, like, to your point, it was a lot. It's just there's no off switch in that world. And I don't necessarily have the same experience with parents being overly involved. There's almost in my space where, to your point, they are using resources to send the kids here, and they almost trust us to do our job. I think I was telling somebody the other day, I had a conversation with a parent, and it's, I'm sure you have a lot of these. I'm like, nah, in 9 years, this is like my seventh one. What? I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's an aspect of kind of trust and partnership, right? That goes on with that. But then there is the accessibility because everybody, like intimately, because it's such a smaller place. So I hear you on that. What you mentioned, Duarte is the best place you've ever been. Tell me more about that.
It's a combination of athletics and the community and how the school is a community-centered school within Duarte. We talk a lot about the Duarte family, something that I've adopted that just hit me in the first couple of years I was there. When I first got there, I was teaching with a lady who had been there for 30 years and just entrenched in the Duarte community. But the community itself rallies around the high school, not just athletics, all aspects of it. And it's small enough that nobody gets lost within that community. And it's one of the things that I embraced as I got there and then ran with it. So when we're looking for new coaches, when I started to hire coaches, when coaches were starting to leave in my early days, one of the things I looked for was a connection to the community. Either alumni lived in the community, had some connection to it. For example, our head basketball coach is a man by the name of Steve Goldstein. Steve has been around forever as a basketball coach. He was at LaSalle High School forever. And he ended up not coaching basketball at LaSalle. They made a change there. And that was a Catholic private school. He still coached golf and did some other things. And then we were looking for a new coach. He was looking for a new opportunity. And one of the reasons, we had lots of really talented candidates. And what sort of sold me and my principal was that Steve lived 2 blocks away. He was a Duarte resident. And he was invested by being part of the community in that program. And it's shown over I think this is his 4th season that we've had him at the helm. He is connected to the community. One of the first things he wanted to do is he wanted to run a basketball camp for 2 weeks during the summer for the kids, for the middle school kids and the elementary school kids. And I was like, yes. And it validated the choice that I made, or that we made. It just wasn't totally me, that he was the right man. And so he works hard. He works hard in the community. He represents our school well. And that's because he lives in Duarte. He's part of our family.
It's interesting the way you describe that as like a throwback to like a small town environment, but it's plugged in the middle of greater Los Angeles, which as a Northern Californian, I don't think of it that way. So it's really interesting that the town has that type of feel. Have you ever been anywhere else that's had that feel down there where you live?
No, honestly, no. Being a LA Unified product, LA Unified is a sprawling mass of schools and whatnot. And the thing I say a lot is LA Unified, I was a number. I had my employee number and that was it. And maybe my administrator knew my name. Okay, it's time to evaluate you. At Duarte, I walk up to the district office and see my superintendent and say, hello, hey, how are you? Good, coach, how are you? Go to the secretary. Hey, good morning, coach. What are you here for, to see whoever? So everybody at the office, the ladies in the finance office who I deal with, the assistant superintendents, everybody knows your name. Everybody, it's like family. It really is. We have a new superintendent, Dr. Jessica Medrano, that we just hired a few months ago. And she's fantastic. I'm sitting with her at a baseball game and we're just chatting it up. I say, hey, they let you out of the office today. And she's, yeah, any every opportunity I can. I want to get out here. I want to get into the sports. It was like two people at a Dodger game chatting it up about kids and whatnot and watching our kids play. And it's that kind of a community at Duarte where, you know, if I was at a larger school or certainly the superintendent of LA Unified, I'm not sitting next to him at a baseball game talking about our kids and our experience and watching our kids play. So that is small town America. Now that you make that reference, it's this little pocket of small town America in a major urban center that is Los Angeles. And that's one of the things I really like about it.
It's cool because they're smaller school districts. Like you said, there's one high school and there's a lot of those around, but there's not a ton of those where the school and the athletes and the Friday Night Lights thing that you would get in the sticks in Northern California or in Texas or something like that, that still exists in a big metro area. So that's really neat to hear that exists. I'm curious. So you're at Westmark private doing your thing there. You come to public and it's the first time you're going like AD to AD. What did you realize, even after 20 years of experience doing a lot of these things, that you needed to figure out? I thought I had this thing dialed, and now, wait a second, let me press pause, and here's the list of things that I wasn't ready for.
I was ready for pretty much all of it because at Westmark, I described it as a boutique school. It was me. That was it. I did everything. And I had a little support in the office for certain things. Every aspect of the athletic program was mine from A to Z. So when I came into Duarte, I was fully prepared for everything that you needed to be able to do or that you were responsible for as an athletic director. For me, the biggest challenge was finding the rhythm and the tenor, the people that were already there that had this institutional knowledge that I'm not coming in there and trying to change. In fact, the athletic secretary at the time, I just was like, okay, how do we do this? What's the process here at Duarte? Getting checks for officials. What's the process? Right? If I'm ordering buses, what's the process for that? So all those things. And she pretty much, the first 6 months, I just said, hey, you tell me what we need to do. Tell me what I'm responsible for here at Duarte. What's the process? How we do things? How do things get done? And then after that, I'm a big believer on building relationships with people that you are working with. The office manager, the financial clerk who runs all the ASB accounts and whatnot. These people are people that I'm going to be dealing with all the time. Our athletic secretary. And then coaches. I really try to do a good job of being accessible and relatable to all my coaches so that you're not coming here as a number to coach. You're coming here, like we say, to be part of the Duarte family and to be part of our community. And I tell them, I'm going to do everything that I need to do to make your job easy because I want you to concentrate on coaching and our student athletes. So all the other stuff that goes with having to do athletics, I will handle all that. And I'll handle any other things that you think take away from your ability to concentrate on coaching and working with our student athletes and building our programs. So that's really, there wasn't anything that surprised me. There wasn't anything I needed to get a learning curve on. Although some of the best practices that I've gotten better at have come from my involvement in the Foothill Citrus Athletic Directors Association, because honestly, I was a small boutique school sitting in on these league meetings, and these ADs had, a lot of them who have retired now, had been there forever, and they had these best practices that they did, and they were at big schools. 700 was big for me. My high school at Westmark, the numbers were somewhere in 120, right? The school was larger. It was a 3rd through 12th grade, and I started a elementary school program, expanded the middle school program, so I had access across, but in sheer numbers, it was completely different. That, I think, was the learning curve that I got. All those best practices for all those things that they did. I didn't process a lot of transfers at Westmark. We didn't have any kids who played anywhere else. They came to Westmark because that's where they needed to be in the 9th grade. And if they came from somewhere else, I can't remember processing a transfer that wasn't a non-participation, right? Because where they came from, they didn't participate in athletics. So some of those subtle nuances and the things that had to do with dealing with the CIF office on a grander scale, those were the things that I learned most from, and learned most from those people that made me a more well-rounded, better athletic director to be able to service the needs of my community.
Yeah, the funny thing you mentioned, I didn't have to deal with any transfers that had played, and we get 65 a year, and we're chipping through those. So it's good that you have people to walk you through that, because it gets more complicated and more complicated every year and how they navigate that. I want to go back to what you said earlier, very casually, about 8-man football. I'm assuming Duarte's 11-man.
It is.
So what would you, there in the smaller schools, there sometimes becomes pressure to go to 8-man to sustain your program, because it's just a numbers game, right? So I'm curious what your take is on the impact of having 11-man football does for your school. And the reason I'm asking is, right, there's some smaller schools like us, especially down in your area, that have gone to 8-man. The whole East Coast in the boarding school world is essentially 8-man in certain areas. And no, the second you do that, it's hard to get it back. And you're not necessarily as attractive to students that are serious about football. So I'm just curious your take, because I've never had it, and you've been in both worlds. I'd love to get any opinions you have whatsoever on the difference, the value add, having it at all versus not. Just curious.
I was lucky enough to be president of the 8-man Football Coaches Association here in the southern section for many years. The difference between 8-man football and 11-man football is a lot of times you get your student athletes and they're not some big stud football player that's gracing your campus. They're all generally tend to be good kids, some of them really great athletes, some of them not so great. They want the opportunity. And so you need to coach them up a whole lot. They don't know a lot about the game. When I was at Westmark, we ran a version of the wing T that I had learned at prep when I was there. And I said, ooh, this will be interesting. I love this offense. It's for undersized offensive linemen. That's us, right?
I'm blown away that you can run that with only 8 dudes, because that's a complex system.
I got it. I simplified it, made it easy. Your quarterback is both a running back and a quarterback. And for the time that we used it, it was a long time. It was 3 or 4 seasons before other teams figured out how to defend it, because they had never seen it at the 8-man level. I've seen a lot of double wing at the 8-man level, but not a lot of single wing and wing T.
Can you still run the Sally counter out of the 8-man version?
You can run everything. You just got to be a little bit creative. And the thing about 8-man football is a lot of the matchups are one-on-one, because you only have 8 guys. So there's no redundancy within the defense. So sometimes I'm happy with setting up a play where my guy's one-on-one against another guy. Because if I beat him, I'm gone. We're gone. It's successful. Now, being an 8-man defensive coordinator as well, you just want to pull your hair out that way, because you get caught in those situations all the time. And I was at Viewpoint. I was calling defense for Coach McIntyre. I said, look, man, if I get you a stop a half, we win. because you need to score every time. If I get you a stop a half, that's a 14-point difference, and I expect us to win. And he would laugh and say yes. And I pride myself on being able to get more than a stop a half sometimes. And in the 8-man world, the disparity from teams that are playing that are really good and teams that are just playing football can be dramatic. And at Westmark, we were a team when I first started that was just playing football. And we got to a level where we were much more competitive. And that, in large part, had to do with learning how the kids learned and then setting up this system, which was widely successful for us because not a lot of people knew how to defend it at the 8-man level. So it gave us a little bit of advantage.
And how would you say the culture is around football at a school with 8-man versus 11-man?
You've seen a lot of 8-man schools. I'll do Rio Hondo Prep, which is down here. Rio Hondo Prep, when I was first coaching at Pilgrim at 8-man, was the 8-man standard. Coach Randall Johnson, who had been there for years, Rio Hondo Prep was the creme de la creme of 8-man football. One of my proudest coaching victories in my entire 30-year coaching career was beating Rio Hondo Prep at Rio Hondo Prep with a team that I had at Pilgrim. You just didn't do that. So Rio Hondo Prep really embraced football. You went to Rio Hondo and man, that was Friday Night Lights. That place was packed. People in the community were all over it. And in places like Joshua Springs, Cuyama Valley, small communities, they come out. It's like Texas on a Friday night. So if that's their team, that's what they come and support. Now, at a school like Westmark or some of these other 8-man teams that are within these urban centers, it's a little different. It's not the only game in town. But we were able to build at Westmark a rabid fan base through parents and whatnot. Who I had a guy who was an English guy, and he grew up on soccer. He had no clue about football. But by the end, his son wanted to play football. He was absolutely nuts about it. He was they described him as the world's first male supermodel. This is what this guy was. So he would take these trips. And I remember him telling me that he was in Fiji shooting some sort of cover, but he told them he was leaving on Thursday to get to the game on Saturday. So if you're not done, he told them, I'm leaving because my son is playing football. And it didn't matter whether it was 8 or whatnot. His son was playing football. And so there's a lot of that within the 8-man community in some of those smaller places. And Rio Hondo is an example of a school that was 8-man, who's now 11-man, and doing the same thing. They just won the section title again for, the second straight year. They're a school of, 70, 80 boys, and they're playing in Division 4, 5 here. Yeah. They're a unique situation, but Flintridge Prep started 8-man, went to 11-man when I was there, dropped back to 8-man when I coached there again because they couldn't support it. But you go to a Flintridge Prep game, they're playing 8-man football, man, that sideline's packed, fans there. The cheerleaders are cheering. It's a whole community event. Everybody from the school shows up. It can be done, and each school has to decide what's best. Yeah. It's the best for us to go to 8-man. Yeah. And if we do, then we're cultivating a different student athlete. I remember at Prep, the guys there when I was coaching are still there that were on my staff, and we just don't get the same kind of athlete that we had when we were 11-man. But we take those guys and we coach them up, and some of them are really good baseball players, but we turn them into football players, or they're really good basketball players.
Yeah. That's the standard at small schools is you need to be a throwback. You need your kids playing everything. In the era of sports specialization, you are often the only voice that is hammering that home because they're getting different information outside of that. How do you navigate that at your site?
It's a selling point. We just brought in all of our 8th graders from all of our middle schools within the district. And that was this last week. And one of the rotations through is athletics. And I have some of my coaches there. I have student athletes who are talking about their experience. And the thing that I sell is what I talked about earlier, family. And we expect you to be a multi-sport athlete. If you go to a larger school that's around us, I say, chances are you may be asked to play one sport and not encouraged to do anything else. Here at Duarte, we have lots of student athletes who do something in the fall, do something in the winter, and then do something in the spring. We have kids that do multiple sports, especially if it's an individual sport. I had a kid who did cross country in the fall and played football. In the spring, we have track, so they'll do track, and sometimes they'll do boys tennis. We still haven't figured out how to do both track and swim, but there are kids that want to do those things. So a kid who was specific to, he was a shot putter. He also wanted to play boys volleyball. So we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen with those coaches because you want that experience. So I sell that as you have an opportunity to play any sport you want. Nobody's going to tell you that you can't.
Right.
And by virtue of that, your friend group, when you come in as a ninth grader, these are the kids that you play sports with that are going to be in your friend group. You're going to make friends that are going to last a lifetime, and you're going to have the opportunity to do it across so many different sports.
How many sports do you sponsor? And what decisions have you had to make in the 8 years at Duarte, either adding or subtracting to fit your clientele and the ability to field teams?
We haven't cut. I can only think of one sport that we've cut, and that's basically because of student interest. So we had a pretty decent golf program, and we did a co-ed golf. The interest in that waned where we just didn't have enough student athletes that were interested. So we don't field golf anymore, but we field in the fall football, flag football, which for us is new. It's an incredibly just growing sport, especially within our section. This will be our 4th season of doing that. And just on a side note, our flag coach, when we were getting ready to hire it, I flirted with, I'm going to get back into coaching. I think maybe I'll do flag football. And then I thought it was more important to find a woman to head up that flag football program. I just thought it was important. So we had one of our coaches that was doing basketball and track, asked her if she was interested. Oh, God, yes. So I hired her. She's done a fantastic job. She's taken another job within a district that prohibits her time-wise from being able to coach with us at all, which is a tremendous loss. But I went to my principal. I said, I'm thinking about picking up flag football this year. I kind of get the itch to coach. And he was like, are you serious? And I said, yeah. So there was like a tremendous amount of support. So I'm going to pick up flag football, which getting back into coaching it's going to be, for me, exciting. I really love it. So we field those 2 footballs. We field girls tennis, girls volleyball, which is one of our bigger sports. We field teams across all 3 levels, frosh, soft, JV, varsity. And we have cross country, which a new teaching partner, when she came in, I said, you're doing cross country. I don't have any experience. That doesn't matter. I need a coach who's on campus to recruit kids to come be part of the program. And so that's grown. In the winter, we do boys and girls basketball, boys and girls soccer, and my new favorite sport since I got to Duarte, which is wrestling. I fell in love with wrestling. I had never seen it. At the school I was at, LA Unified, wrestling was not, it just wasn't supported within the public school system in LA Unified. But I went to Duarte and first meet, I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. So we have a brand new gym that we've just finished construction that we started using in the fall. We've hosted now a couple of wrestling meets. You play that rock music, they do their circle thing, they warm up, and just the matches are incredible. So we do wrestling, and that program really suffered after COVID. It was one of those programs where, because it was right up, you're in next to somebody. And we've slowly, with our coach, Josh Perez, built that program back up. So that's the winter. And in the fall, it's baseball, it's softball, track, swimming, boys tennis, and then we've added stunt, which is another fantastic sport. We had interest in doing stunt. We started it last year. We didn't win a match. This year, the girls they work hard, and they're in there every day for 2.5 hours in our gym. And they've won a couple matches. There's an incredible amount of excitement. And when we get back from the spring break that Thursday, we're going to host our first stunt. When you host stunt, you host it for the entire league for us. So all the league schools are going to come to Duarte, and I'm super excited to do that. So those are the sports we offer. Yeah. Golf is the only one that we haven't.
Yeah.
But we added boys volleyball. I had a kid who transferred specifically because at Azusa High School, they didn't have boys volleyball. We're going to. Coach, I want to do boys volleyball. He was in my P class. I said, no problem, man. Get me a list of 15 kids that want to do the sport, and I'll run with it. We'll do it in the spring. And I'll be danged if he didn't come up with that. Went to my principal. I want to add boys volleyball. He was like, absolutely, let's go. There's student interest. So if the students are interested in participating in a sport, it generally happens at Duarte.
Yeah.
We're entering a new era where financial considerations are starting to be a whole lot more prevalent just across all schools, all public schools. I'm hoping that'll still stay the same if I wanted to add a particular sport. But we've added stunt, we've added flag football, we've added boys volleyball. So we've made additions while I've been there based on what the students want. Here's the other thing. We don't do water polo, but my registrar, who was there for the 8th grade, she said, I can't tell you how many kids have come up and goes, going to do water polo? I want to play water polo. She goes, I think we need to add water polo. And I'm like, all right, let's go.
So that already have a pool and you got a swim team.
We do. We use the city pool. And if we're going to add water polo, we'll make that work.
Yeah, the tricky thing becomes, so just running down my list, you don't have polo right now, you don't have field hockey, you don't have lacrosse, boys or girls, and you added boys volleyball, and you have flag football. So then adding those, depending on where they land, has the possibility of impacting those other programs. And so that's the thing that ultimately, in our role, there's the demand, there's a interest, not a demand, interest. And it's not like boys volleyball for us. We had it one season, it wasn't sustainable. We already have 6 other boys sports in the spring that have a long history and tradition at the school. It's just like we don't have the numbers to have that without killing one of our other programs. And it's okay. Those are my former boss used to talk about, where do you want to push your chips in? You only have so many. And I think as we are navigating that, you at your site, me at my site, whoever's listening to this at their site, there's the novelty of, hey, this will be really cool. And then there's what's the unintended consequence it's going to have on some of your more established programs and putting your athletes in a situation where they may have to choose depending on what your school policies are. So thanks for sharing that. I was very curious about how, again, a smaller school decides to go about those things. Have you had any, as you added boys volleyball, any residual impact on your other spring sports?
No, and I thought it might affect track or baseball. But our baseball program the last few years, ever since COVID, pretty much we haven't been able to field a JV. So we just had a varsity. So we've added boys volleyball, which is a varsity and a JV program. There's lots of kids excited about it and participating in it. And this year we actually fielded JV baseball. It came a little late. It wasn't until January when Coach did tryouts where he said, oh my God, I have enough to do a JV team. Nice. So I had to hire a coach. We're playing an abbreviated league season, but the kids are out there and they're playing, and there's 15, 16, 17 of them. Nice. Right? We can't find enough playing time for them. It surprisingly, the sports that we've added haven't taken away from any other sports. I thought flag football would drain girls volleyball. No, girls volleyball is still the same. Hasn't affected girls tennis. I think that's because the student athletes at Duarte understand that whatever they gravitate to is there for them, and they're going to do it. Adding flag football just added students who weren't involved in anything else. But oh my gosh, flag football, I'm in. So it's increased the participation numbers dramatically for us without sacrificing any of the other sports that we've offered in the past.
Got it. Thank you for that. Okay, you've been at many sites, and I'm generally curious about what's the best thing you do in your program that follows you from site to site, that regardless of where you are, it's showing up. And my curiosity is more around what is something you can offer others that has the most transformational impact on developing culture, which is obviously a buzzword, but it's like, hey, I've done this at every single site, and here's why, and we're going to keep doing it. I'm going to coach girls flag football in the fall, and we're going to do this because this is the impact that it has.
Building community and building family within the team. So I tell all my coaches that, look, here's the reality. Duarte High School is not winning CIF championships. We're not hanging multiple banners anywhere near, for lots of different reasons. One, the size of our school. Don't get me started on competitive equity. Because competitive equity for 95% of the schools within the southern section is fantastic. And you're starting to see schools that were locked into these mid divisions and getting no playoff berths and whatnot, getting that relief. But our school plays in the lowest division for almost everything, right? At 700. So competitive equity, either we have to deal with the larger schools dropping in, or we're so good, we're moving up. And that's been the reality for all of our schools that are at that level. So I tell my coaches, make long-term goals, but make them realistic. I want you to build a program that the kids are excited about participating in, that they get value from. You're developing the student athlete as a whole, not just an athlete, but as a person. So when they look back on it, they're not going to look back on wins and losses. They're going to look back on the experience that they had. And if you're running a program like that, then you're good. I'm not going to make a change because of wins and losses. If you have the opportunity to be successful and get wins, great, that's fantastic. But at the core, this is where we put our emphasis on, not we're going to be a CIF champion, right? We're not. Hey, get a playoff berth. That's what we're really looking at. Build culture, build a program. The kids are having a positive experience, and then compete for a playoff berth in every sport. And we do. We're in the playoffs a lot. And if we're lucky enough, our girls softball team the last 4 years has won the league championship for 4 years in a row. They're good. They're really good. And that's a testament to their coaching staff and the kids that put in the work. But those are the points of emphasis, not these lofty, come here to Duarte because you're going to win a CIF championship. No, you're coming to Duarte because you're a neighborhood kid for the most part. This is where you live. So I want that experience to be reflective of our community. And we do have a few transfers that filter in here and there. We just integrate them into the community and what I stress. So those are the things that I started at Westmark. I started when I was a coach in just my own program that I'm doing. And I just proliferate that all through all of our sports.
No, I think ultimately, I was talking to one of our coaches the other day and looking at this spring season where one of the teams in particular, it's almost like every game, 80% of the kids are riding home with their parents after the game. And I'm just like shaking my head, and that doesn't happen on my team. We all go together and we come back together because like culture's built on the bus and the van and on the road. And I was just really trying to figure out why this group of kids in their fall sport and in their spring sport tend to just tap out of that part of the experience and what that then does to what you described, because they're getting 80% of it, not the other part where actually these memories are formed. And so I hear you. That's a great way to do it, is put the focus on the right things and not necessarily on the outcomes. The other thing I'm curious about is you had 8 years where you didn't coach and you're going to practices, you're going to games, you're mentoring, you're being a safe space to talk through things with both kids and adults. And now you're getting back into coaching. So what have you learned watching those other sports that clearly weren't flag football, that now you're going to take back with you to the sidelines, that maybe weren't in your toolbox 8 years ago when you decided to step away?
Just to be fair, in the interim, I did do a couple seasons of freshman boys basketball because we didn't have anybody to do that. So it's not my first jump back into coaching. So I have done a little bit of that. I guess that answer is more about the student athlete has changed, and has changed, at least for me, I think dramatically from COVID and after COVID. One of the things that I've noticed across all the sports is we're breaking down the me back into we. Because during that time, it was all about like self-preservation. I needed to be safe. I needed to take care of my family. And rightly so. Some of those kids who were younger, who are now filtering into the high school, have grown up in that me. I take care of me. I got to take care of this. And so you're trying to retrain them into we, not just me's good, but we is what makes the experience and the sports successful. And so that is one of the things that I've noticed that our coaches, I've said this, you've got to put an emphasis on that back into we, all of us. And one of the things that I'll take into flag football as well. I love coaching women's sports now. I coach my kids. I have two daughters. I coach them forever. I'm a girl dad. I'm an epitome of a girl dad. And one of the things I try to do at Duarte is to empower our female student athletes, right? Softball doesn't cheer at Duarte, in large part because I told the coach, I don't want you to feel like you softball programs, everybody's saying, rip it up the middle. So you're not cheerleaders, you're athletes, I told them. And so if the kids want to cheer on their own, great, but you can't have something that says as a prerequisite of being there, you need to cheer, because they're student athletes. They're athletes first, right? They're not cheerleaders. And so some of those subtle differences. And at Duarte, I would say that our female student athletes drive our sports program. They're the sports that have a lot of success, a lot of involvement and participation, because we try to empower those students. Hey, come out and be a part of this. They see that it's something that they want to do, right? They want to be a part of to enhance their high school experience. So that's, as I get back into coaching, one of the things that I'm going to reestablish, put an emphasis on that, and then just by natural inclination is to be detail oriented and raise the level of IQ within a particular sport. So interesting story just to tell you. So my first year at Duarte, I'm not coaching, and it's the first time in, I don't know, 30 years or whatever it is, right? And my wife is really concerned. Are you going to be okay? Is what she asked me. And I said, I don't know, dear. I don't know until I'm consumed. I was hired like 2 weeks before school started. So I was consumed with getting things going and making sure I was up to speed on all the athletic director stuff. So I don't know. And the season was over, and she said, how'd it go? And I said, I think I'm going to be okay. I meet with those coaches every week. I announce the football game, so I'm there. I'm seeing what goes on. I'm able to throw my 2 cents in. Hey, stop kicking the onside kick so much, coach. Geez, come on. And there is a resource as an old coach to just, I remember telling my coach one time, I need you to put a new passing package in. We run too much and we're too predictable. And he's like, oh, okay. I've described it as I'm still involved in the football aspect of it, but I'm not there every day in 100-degree heat dealing with that. So now 8 years later, it's a whole lot easier. But yeah, that first season, my wife was generally concerned. Are you going to be okay?
Funny. That's funny. No, I've had 1 year off since 1993, probably 94. I think I was more busy that year than I was any other year coaching my children's youth sports. And it was just a replacement with something else. I know that feeling. Let's wrap up with this. So I'm always curious how we are challenging our own belief system. And so the question I always ask is, what have you most recently changed your mind on? And it doesn't have to be sports related, but it's more about the polarization of the world in which we live almost punishes you for questioning your own beliefs or those of the people in your circle. And so I'm just always curious, what's something that you used to be pretty dug in on and you've changed purposefully? Now you're over here. And it wasn't whimsical. It was like because you purposefully were like, this isn't serving anymore. And I don't care what anybody else says. I'm moving over here, and here's why.
I think as a younger coach, I was super dogmatic, really command style coaching. This is what I say. Why? It's because I told you. I'm the coach. Why are we asking questions? I'm the coach. I told you, you need to pull on that. And I've evolved, and this is something that's evolved over years. And I've put more of an emphasis as I was coaching. Obviously, I haven't coached as much in the last 8 years on the needs of the student athlete and being more communicative and not arbitrary, so to speak. No, I'm asking you to do this because this is what we're trying to accomplish in this particular play or in this particular set. So when I was doing basketball, like, why do I? Because you have to pass the ball there because the ball demands to go there. That's why you need to pass there, not anything else. I want to shoot, but shooting there doesn't help the team, right? So instead of, no, pass the ball there, but why? Shut up, just pass the ball there because that's where it needs to go. So you need to communicate with these student athletes because more and more they want to know why too. And you can't just have this dogmatic style about I'm the coach and because I say so. It helps because then kids understand because you're explaining the process and why things are happening so that they can understand there's a greater reason instead of the coach just says so. And they get to be more involved, I've noticed, right? Like I'm interested in their 2 cents. I'm interested in what they have to say about all aspects of the program with the understanding that, hey, you can always, I tell them, I'm an open door as an athletic director, as a coach. You want to come talk to me about something you don't think that's right, that needs to be changed? I'm here, I'm going to listen. But you have to understand that when we finish, then I may decide that, no, this is still the best way to go. But you'll always have that opportunity. And I think that that's just the way to go. You need to be more collaborative, more communicative, not arbitrary as a coach. And then kids, then they get a sense that if they know and feel that you care about them, you care about their success on and off the field, then they're much more likely to buy into all the things that you're trying to sell them as being part of the team and the team concept.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I still have some of that, but it's more in a joking manner than it was when we were younger and it was real. I'll still say things that like ultimately are tongue in cheek
Right.
that when I was much younger, it was like, no, I really believe that. To someone the other day where I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to coaching basketball, and I used to joke with I used to be serious when I'd say this to the kids. There's two ways to play basketball. There's my way and the wrong way. And like ultimately, like I'll say it now, just like jokingly, where
Yeah.
it's just to get a kind of a rise out of the kids, but you definitely evolve in that kind of dictatorial approach over time to your point where it needs to be more inclusive in partnership, like with anything these days. I did lie. I'm going to ask another question. This is more about being an AD. What is the best tool you have adopted over the last however many years that you are utilizing that has made your life easier? More and specific to either your role as an AD or coaching.
Cool.
Yeah, so
Well,
for example, I'll throw a couple out here for people that aren't on the pod every week. So there is a software app called Calendly that you schedule this meeting with, right? Where we don't have to go back and forth and find out, hey, what works for you? What works for you? It's now here, book some on my calendar. There's that, right? There's Otter AI, which now when I kicked you out of the call, I was trying to kick Otter out, which is automatically jumps into meetings and transcribes them and gives you task lists and everything that no longer do I have to write everything down. I can be present in whatever meeting I'm in because I've got an automated note taker. Things like that that maybe have made your life easier.
I am still old school. I don't, if you're talking about those kind of technology tools, I haven't embraced that. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, it's not a drive that I need to make a change from anything because the old school ways that I'm doing things still service the needs for myself, for
Yeah.
athletic department, for my administration, all of that stuff. Some of my colleagues have moved over to CIF Home to do their student clearances and to do all their paperwork. We're still old school at Duarte. And one of the reasons I didn't is because if a parent had a problem
Yeah.
or needed to add something quickly to a student's athletic packet to be
Yeah.
cleared, all they have to do is come down to the office and hand my secretary something. I don't have to wait for them to navigate for them, some sort of technology tool on CIF Home to input or download or upload something correctly, right? And that's because I still want this, again, it goes back to family, right?
Yeah.
You have an issue, somebody needs help in your family, then you've got somebody to go to. But we're still a little bit old school in that fashion, only because I think it services the needs of our community.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our parents get lost when you're asking them to go online to do this or go online
for
to
sure.
do that. Yeah, my shorter answer is I'm still old school in a lot of ways. I haven't got to where I have an automatic note taker. I'm still jotting stuff down on my piece of paper. But the thing is now is that I'll transcribe that into a Word document and then keep it somewhere.
There you go. You know what? When I see you this week, I'm gonna get you onto some of
Okay.
this 21st century tech that we'll be talking in a year, and you'll be like, man, I can't believe I was always doing it this way.
I'm open to it. I'll be right there listening intently.
Love it. Love it. All right, coach. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on. It's been fun. Looking forward to meeting you in person in about 3 days as
Sound
we
good?
settle in to learn from others.
All right.